Na, sziasztok gyerekek, itt el vagyok mélyülve ezeknek az eseményeknek a nézésébe, és csak nem értem az egészet.
And for the first time sharing their cell phone videos and feelings of outrage with NBC4.
It was a nightmare. It was actually a nightmare.
Well, I saw a lot of people getting out of cars and started like banging and destroying the entrance to the CVS. You know, all this crazy chaos. It doesn't make any sense.
He could not comprehend why, after a protest, carloads of people would return. The video showing one person getting what appears to be a crowbar from a car, accompanied by someone wearing a headlamp.
It was like they were all like organized looters.
Neighbors say there were lookouts.
Signal for the other people to come, and then they were hopping the walls, pulling up in all kind of direction.
Other businesses up and down Sunset Boulevard were vandalized and looted too. But we are beginning to hear more and more accounts about residents pushing back.
Me and about 30 people stood in front of the Yucca Market on Cahuenga, and we were defending the place from looters.
We actually had to witness our neighbors with taser guns and their own guns with laser lights on them to show people that we were not playing on this block here.
Well, we had our tasers out. But you know what I mean? You pull the taser out, somebody else is gonna bring something bigger.
He went into his pocket and to, I guess, pull it out. And at that moment, that's when the undercover pulled up and everyone just started yelling, he has a gun, and they took off.
Police arrived after neighbors dug in and stood up for each other and their neighborhood market. In Hollywood, Tony Ginyard, NBC4 News.
Well, some powerful scenes from Anaheim last night as protesters mobilized for another day of demonstrations. And this is not the first time the city has been at the center of a social uprising. We saw similar scenes in 2012 after protesters rallied against police shootings.
NBC4's Vicky Vargas is live in our Orange County Bureau with a look at what has changed. Vicky.
You know, Michael, it really at the time became known as the Summer of Unrest. 7 people shot and killed by Anaheim police in the span of just 12 months. Now, today we talked to police and we also talked to a community activist. She says some of those emotional wounds still hurt, but together they say they believe the city is moving forward. Yesenia Rojas says this could not have happened in 2012.
Thank you,
A food giveaway that brought together the community, the YMCA, buses from the resort district, which normally shuttle people around Disneyland. Now it's happening every day in some of Anaheim's lower income neighborhoods.
It's better.
Yeah.
I think it's most of being working together, talking, meeting each other, this communication.
Police admit there was little communication when this happened. Manuel Diaz was shot and killed when police thought he had a gun. He had thrown a bag of drugs on a roof, but was found with a cell phone. The officers were not charged, leading to days of protests at City Hall and the police department.
In a lot of ways, we've made a ton of progress, and I think in some ways, we've made no progress.
Captain Craig Friesen says since 2012, the department has added a police review board with civilians who now show up at critical incidents. He says state law mandates that video and information from shootings be made public within 45 days. He actually met with the family of Devontae Emanuel, who was shot and killed following a domestic violence call.
And it was probably the most honest and transparent thing I've ever been involved in law enforcement, and it was difficult.
Rojas' son was bitten by a police dog the day Manuel Diaz was killed. Her son was not arrested. But looking back, she says that incident forced her to connect with the police department.
We've been having this time to talk and to look for ways to build better communities, especially to give back to the youth.
Police officials say back in 2012, they could not communicate the why behind many of these shootings. Now they can. They're even forced to with those body-worn cameras. Yesenia Rojas says there is one thing also they are doing now that didn't happen before. They are talking to each other. Reporting live, I'm Vicky Vargas, NBC4 News.
Well, get out of the street and into my home. A D.C. man opened his doors to dozens of protesters last night. He said officers physically attacked and pepper sprayed more than 200 of them. Here's video of everyone coming out this morning after they spent the night there.
Valaki beengedte az utcai tüntetőket a lakásra.
From the White House, there was a 7 p.m. curfew in effect. Some protesters said they were aware of it, but got caught up in the police line. You can see them sheltering inside, coughing from the smoke outside. They say they're grateful for the man who let them in.
He had helped me out by charging my phone.
He
had said if anything was to happen, then we are allowed to go inside the house.
What happened here was an amazing group of people ranged from 50 years old to 18 years old that were gathered here peacefully and were absolutely decimated and beaten on the steps of my house on Swan Street. Being pushed, pepper sprayed. I was pepper sprayed on my steps.
Well, that curfew lifted this morning at 6 o'clock.
Well, for the past 7 straight nights, what started as peaceful demonstrations have quickly dissolved into chaos, and that has many people asking, who are some of these protesters and what are their agendas? NBC's Blaine Alexander gives us some perspective from Atlanta.
As thousands pour into the streets in city after city, there's a growing question. Who is among the protesters?
They hijacked our protest. I don't even think they know what the protest is. They just wanted a reason.
Azt mondta, hogy ellopták a protestet ellopták tőlük, mivel hogy lopni jöttek meg gyilkolni.
A legitimate protest movement hijack? Yes, you can.
They were not here.
Fredo megmondja.
They were here to destroy Atlanta.
How much do we know about the makeup of these groups?
What the early signs are telling us is that we've got a diverse group of dangerous organizations and individuals who are trying to exploit these protests for their own agenda.
Beyond Black Lives Matter and community activists, officials are singling out other groups, extremists on the far left and right, and those with radical anti-government ideologies. President Trump has repeatedly pointed to Antifa, a militant anti-fascist movement, as fueling the violence. But NBC News has found the president has not provided any proof.
I want the organizers of this terror to be on notice that you will face severe criminal penalties and lengthy sentences in jail.
Law enforcement officials say only a small percent of protesters are motivated by extremist ideology. Now, law enforcement have the painstaking task of picking them out, monitoring social media, clothes, symbols, even who's getting arrested.
Yeah, this is an all-out operation to conduct surveillance, monitoring, and source development so that they can try to isolate the players and prevent them from getting in and creating harm.
But for those on the streets protesting peacefully,
we just want our voice to be heard.
Well, crowds gathered in Manhattan Beach this afternoon to protest the death of George Floyd and police violence, some holding Black Lives Matter signs. The rally was organized by young people from the area. Many stores had boarded up windows around the Manhattan Beach pier just in case things got out of hand. The police chief of Manhattan Beach joined with protesters and tells us he supports what they did.
Today, I'm so proud of the positive that comes out of this today and beyond. I want everybody to understand this is the right way to do it.
It was indeed a peaceful protest. The chief says things such as looting and property damage just take away from the important message that protesters at the pier today conveyed.
Well, all across the country, we are seeing moments of unity between protesters and police officers. And this morning in downtown Los Angeles, we saw officers engaging with even embracing marchers. And last night, New York's top cop took a knee. Over in Washington Square Park, Police Commissioner Terrence Monahan stepped into that crowd of protesters after items were thrown at police officers. He said, "As a police officer over here who thinks Minnesota was justified, we stand with you on that." And then he took a knee. Not at Colorado Springs, where police officers joined a protest, talking with demonstrators about their concerns, asking how they can help, and offering their support.
We want to make sure we got out here today to show them that we truly do care. And so I get a little emotional because it means so much to me that people see who we are behind the badge and that we really do love this community.
It's nice to see that they're actually here out here to support us and they're here to support George Floyd and everything. It's just 5 of them, 1 of them, or all of them.
Officers and organizers also had a bigger discussion about how to work toward long-term unity.
After days of rioting and looting in parts of Riverside County, supervisors have now decided not to continue a county-wide curfew. But the city of Hemet is still under a 7-day curfew, and some business owners there want that to change. NBC4's Tony Shin is live at Hemet now, where the city council is taking action on that issue. Tony.
Yeah, Carolyn, we could have a big decision by that city council in the coming hours. But first, I want to show you some of that damage. Take a look behind me, and you can see this entrance right here has been boarded up. This is why the city imposed a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. But that could soon be lifted.
Small businesses in Hemet dealing with curfews and a big cleanup. After what happened Sunday night, looters breaking into Hemet Valley Mall and other businesses along Florida Avenue. Witnesses say at least some of them took part in an earlier protest.
It was very peaceful for a good amount of time, and then they started throwing rocks at the cops' cars and stuff, and then from there, west all the way to east, they just started looting.
They went to my register. Angel Matias just opened Hemet Wireless a month ago. This husband was smashing his front window and then ransacking his store.
It's just crazy how people just have no respect for other people's things, man. They just come break and try to get what they can for free.
On Monday, the city imposed a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew that continues until June 8th. City manager Chris Lopez told NBC4 by phone that the curfew is for the health and safety of everyone.
Hemet will not put up with violence, and we will protect our business owners and our citizens.
District 1 council member Carly Meyer says she and other council members will address the curfew this evening during a closed meeting.
We can determine whether we need to make any.
Now we're trying to see daylight. The owner of Early Bird Cafe says the pandemic has already hurt many small businesses, and keeping the curfew could be the final financial blow. He's hoping the curfew is rescinded with an option if circumstances call for it. Day by day is a better. Now that city council meeting is set to begin in just about 15 minutes. We of course will keep you updated on what happens next. That's the latest from here. Reporting live in Hemet, I'm Tony Shin, NBC4 News.
All right, Tony, thank you for that. Well, it's not just here in the U.S. People overseas are also marching in outrage. Over to Dublin now, thousands of people carried protest signs and chanted in solidarity with Black Lives Matter movement here. A multiracial crowd marched to the U.S. Embassy calling for justice for George Floyd's family.
It's a protest for Black lives. I know all lives do matter, but Black lives, and it doesn't seem to matter.
In Australia, 3,000 people marched in downtown Sydney calling for the Australian government to address racism and police violence.
It's just gut-wrenching, the climate of what's happening in America. And it's also happening here in Australia. Though it's subtle, the racism is real for me.
In the Netherlands, thousands filled a square in central Amsterdam shouting, "Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace, and I can't breathe." A smaller crowd gathered in Stockholm, Sweden, calling for an end to police violence and racism.
I'm just tired to see black bodies getting killed because they have black skin. It's crazy. I'm too upset. I have no words. This has to end.
Other marches across the globe have turned into violent clashes with police. This is southern Brazil, where a peaceful march had nearly come to an end near a state university, but a smaller group marched into the downtown area, throwing objects and breaking windows, and there you see the response by police. They're firing rubber bullets and tear gas to break up the crowd. No one was arrested.
Now to Syria, where a long civil war continues, a striking mural stands now in honor of George Floyd. The artwork appeared on the last standing wall of a building damaged by airstrikes. The artist says the video of George Floyd reminded him of the Syrian children killed in a suspected chemical attack back in 2017. Well, he says he wanted to send a message of solidarity to all humanitarian causes around the world.
LA County's public health director has spoken out about racism's negative effect on health in the African American community, not only in terms of access to care, but also the stress of racism physically affecting the body. NBC4's Patrick Healy joins us now with that part of the story. Patrick.
Carolyn, Dr. Ferrer's opinion is not unique. We just spoke with an MD, Nana Alfomanen, who is an emergency room physician. She is also active in social causes. She is leading the My COVID MD effort. She sees a need for words to lead to actions. But first,
Feketéknek a más nem tudom, hogy gyerek embromra, nem tudom, most kicsit kisütött az agyamat.
The root cause of health inequities is racism and discrimination.
In the medical community, this is not new information for us, you know? It's very important that the lay community understands and that they understand that leadership understands.
Nem tudom elmagyarázni, egyszerű, de
But beyond just acknowledging it, what are we going to do differently?
az, hogy a feketék hamarabb halnak meg átlagban, életkorban, és ez is a fehér embernek a hibája, mert a rasszizmus miatt mentálisan saját magukat betegítik meg.
When you have communities that are like, why do I need to get tested? You have to understand where the why comes from. You know, when they're saying I have a bigger chance of dying from in the hands of a police officer than I am going to be die from COVID, that's a real issue. You know, whether you believe it or not, that's what they believe. And if they believe that, then we have to dissect that.
Több esélyed van rendőr által meghalni, mint a Covid-ban.
Dr. Alfomanen and Dr. Ferrer agreed on several points that this goes beyond the access to health care, goes beyond public education, that there is a definite nexus between the stress that individuals feel in their lives due to racism and discrimination that becomes manifested physically in diseases such as hypertension and heart disease. And Dr. Ferrer sees that as a root.
Tehát azért halnak meg nagyon sokszor. Doktor úr, hol van? Kérem szépen, kerüljön már elő. Most kell egy orvosi szakvélemény. Doki ezt a visszanézi, akkor...
Let's not forget, all of these protests and demonstrations are happening while we are in the middle of a global pandemic. Health officials are
kifagyott az agyam.
see a spike in cases in a few weeks because of confirmed cases in our area right now, county by county. LA County has more than 57,000 positive cases. Orange County is approaching 6,600. Riverside County with more than 8,100 cases. San Bernardino County just hit the 5,500 case mark. Ventura County, more than 1,100 cases. The death toll in our 5-county region now stands at more than 3,000.
Ígyunk a egyenlőségre.
With a social media movement called Blackout Tuesday. NBC4's Ezrek shows us how this is in memory of George Floyd and all victims.
Yeah, that's right. If you've been on social media at all today, your feed might have
4 óra 47 perc volt erről szó, csak a vissza akarom keresni.
This is a movement that was started by some record executives who wanted to ask artists to take a break from promoting their own music projects and try to focus some attention on the message that's being sent out by thousands of protesters who are currently out on the streets. Madonna's Instagram account is one of thousands of
American soldiers killing Muslims. Az volt leírva. Tekerjétek és nézzétek meg.
Like Apple and Spotify paused programming on some of their channels for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to acknowledge the amount of time a Minneapolis police officer held his knee on George Floyd's neck as he died. The movement was started by executives from Atlantic Records, who today used their Instagram account to flash images of the civil rights struggle over the past 50 years. KFI radio host and music industry veteran Mo Kelly says Blackout Tuesday is meant as a symbolic gesture of support for tens of thousands of protesters who are on the streets all around the world.
It's another way in which you can express solidarity, but not necessarily being out with the protesters physically, but emotionally with them.
Singer and actor Jamie Foxx posted a black box today. He's become one of the movement's most vocal entertainers, encouraging other celebrities to join in.
And what I want to say about my Hollywood friends, you got to get out here. You got to come out here. You can't sit back. You can't tweet. You can't text. You got to get out here.
Some activists discouraged people from using the hashtag Black Lives Matter when posting black squares because protesters used that hashtag to search for resources and they didn't want social media feeds to be clogged. with powerful players like Quincy Jones, Justin Bieber, and Columbia Records all showing support. Mo Kelly hopes Blackout Tuesday will help lead to real change.
Although we may have hashtags and although they may bring awareness, ultimately there has to be some sort of change in policies, practices, or legislation to prevent this from happening again.
And so far, more than 30 million people have taken part in Blackout Tuesday in support of this movement. Warner Brothers is now allowing free rentals for the entire month of June for their film Just Mercy, starring Jamie Foxx. That's the film that tells the story of a civil rights attorney who's fighting to free a wrongly convicted African-American man from death row. Reporting live, Angie Crouch, NBC4 News.
All right, Angie, thank you for that. We want to take it back up to Eliana Miranda live over Hancock Park. She's over the mayor's house in News Chopper 4 Alpha, and that crowd has since grown there, Eliana.
It has, Michael. When Gil Davis arrived overhead in News Chopper 4 Bravo, he estimated that the crowd was about 150 people. But since then, we have seen it grow significantly. We now have protesters on both sides of the street, and these streets are going to be 6th and Irving in the Hancock Park area. And the mayor's home is the historic Getty House right there on the corner. Of course, the mayor doesn't own this home. It is a home where the mayor, whoever the mayor is at that time, gets to reside at the home if they so choose to. And Mayor Garcetti does live here, but at this point it's unclear if he's even at the residence or if he's at City Hall. But you can see the large crowd that has gathered just outside the home. And moments ago, and I believe it might be starting up again, some of the protesters actually started line dancing, and you can see that they're actually doing it now. So this is the second time that we have seen them start to dance. And we have seen other cities use dance in their protests as well. And dance can also be used for other things. We noticed that after the Thousand Oaks shooting, at the Year Memorial, line dancing was also used by the people who came to commemorate that anniversary. So it's something that we are seeing here now today as part of this peaceful protest that is taking place here right outside of the Getty House. Again, this is going to be 6th and Irving. This is mostly a residential area. Really, there's not too many majors that run through this neighborhood. But if you happen to live in this neighborhood, I would advise you to avoid these particular streets, because as you can see, we do have traffic enforcement in place. You're not going to be able to make your way through. And since I'm on this street now, this is one street just to the west of the mayor's home. I'm just going to run down the street, and you're going to see a number of police vehicles that have positioned themselves here on the street. And we also have 2 sheriff's transportation buses, and those will be used to transport people that are arrested.
San Diego.
At this point, no one has been arrested. It's not yet curfew time, so the police department is unable to arrest anyone for curfew violations at this time. But if in 1 hour's time, if at 6 o'clock there are still people here in the area, it is possible that they could be arrested. But I'm now going to make my way back to the home, again, back to the Getty House right there on 6th and Irving, so we can just look at some of the activity that is taking place. Again, we have protesters on all sides of the intersection, and right in the middle of the intersection, you can see that there are a number of officers in a skirmish line in every direction, and we have some protesters that are sitting right at their feet. Again, this has been a very peaceful protest. It really hasn't been going on for too long. It's one of the newer protests to break out today. Now, that is the very latest from over Hancock Park in News Chopper 4 Alpha. Let's send it back down to you in the studio.
Eliana, we've seen this crowd grow, and now we see that it is, stretched to the other side of the street as well. So it appears this crowd is fanning out a bit more.
Yeah, it looks like the group has in fact grown somewhat, and people are really coming from all directions. We, again, when we first arrived on scene in News Chopper 4 Bravo with our Gil Davis overhead, he estimated that the crowd was about 150 people. It now, by my estimate, I would say we're closer to 500 people. The airship hasn't given an estimate on how many people they're assuming that this is right outside of the home. But comparing it to some of the large crowds that we have seen today, easily this could be 500 people, perhaps a few more. But you can see that a lot of the messages are the same that we've seen throughout some of the other protests. We've seen a lot of Black Lives Matter signs, but this particular one also includes some signs asking for the defunding of the LAPD. Again, this is Hancock Park, 6th and Irving.
Yeah, big protest here about the mayor's budget. We're going to be hearing from the mayor in about 20 minutes. Well, a business owner whose storefront was damaged by looters has decided to turn the destruction into messages of hope. NBC4's Kim Baldonado has more now from the Fairfax district.
They are messages of hope, of frustration, and of calls to action.
There's so many ways you can protest and so many ways you can fight for what you believe is right. And this is just one of the ways. Art is very powerful, and this is an example of that.
16-year-old Emma is spearheading this art project on the boarded-up windows of her mother's business, Voila Creative Studio.
There's so much sadness and so much hurt and so much rage.
Her business is one of many in LA's Fairfax district damaged by looters over the weekend. This is how it looked Sunday morning, but she was determined to turn this destruction into something positive for the young people of LA.
That see everything all day long. They watch everything on online, media, and they don't have a place to express themselves.
That's why her daughter is gathering messages from her fellow teenagers and painting them on the boarded-up windows of her mother's business.
Generations before us have failed enormously, and it's going to be our generation who has to make the change.
People are stopping here on La Brea near Melrose, taking pictures, and some, like 9-year-old Bailey, are adding their own messages.
I wanted her to get both sides, and I wanted her to see what was going on, so that she could walk away with more of a positive light, the changes that need to be made in America.
Diane Waller says she sees this as a teachable moment for Bailey.
It does send a great message, that the common core is that we're trying to change things, and trying to make it positive.
Other parents are grateful for this outlet for youth expression.
We're heartbroken for the pain that's going on in our country.
That pain is also reflected here, but this project is seen as one step toward positive change.
To give them the opportunity to make the world better, and our part to show them that we're behind them.
The business owner says the messages will stay up as long as there is a demand for justice and a need for hope. In the Fairfax district, Kim Baldonado, NBC4 News.
Now at 5, protests and curfews. Thousands of people take to the streets once again today, voicing their outrage over police brutality and the controversial comment by the police chief. All of this as curfews are set to take effect again for millions of people across Southern California. Good evening once again, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams.
And I'm Chuck Henry. Well, today we have seen protests all across our area, places like Venice, Manhattan Beach, Northridge, Brea, Yorba Linda, and the biggest in Hollywood, where there are thousands of demonstrators. It's just one of several headlines today, and a story of demonstrations that have really not only swept our country, but demonstrations around the world. For a third night, all 88 cities that make up Los Angeles County once again will be under a curfew. That starts in just about an hour at 6 o'clock tonight. Several cities in the Inland Empire and Orange County will also be under a curfew, and we put a list of all of them with the times on our website at NBCLA.com.
While the protests we've seen today have been pretty much peaceful, the LAPD announced today they've arrested more than 2,700 people since the start of these protests. That includes the Hollywood division, which broke its one-day record for arrests with more than 585 just yesterday. Most of those arrests, we should tell you, were for curfew violations.
And throughout this day, we've also seen many striking images, including this one from Hollywood Boulevard. Today, a street known, obviously, around the world for stars and red carpets. Now it is lined with National Guard vehicles. But we've also seen moments of hope, like this from News Chopper 4, between National Guard members and protesters hugging in the middle of the street. And there were also National Guard members who took a knee with protesters, and then they shook hands. We also saw LA Mayor Eric Garcetti taking a knee with protesters downtown, and we're expecting to get an update from the mayor at about 5:15. Colleen?
All of this, of course, started after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And today, the mother of Floyd's daughter spoke at City Hall.
He would never see her grow up, graduate. He would never walk her down the aisle. If it's a problem she's having and she needs her dad, she does not have that anymore. I'm here for my baby. And I'm here for George because I want justice for him.
Well, the officer who knelt on Floyd's neck has been arrested. The other 3 officers involved in that detainment have not. Protesters have been calling for their arrests, and today, the attorney for the Floyd family says authorities have told them the other 3 officers will be charged before Floyd's funeral later this week.
For you, a team of reporters covering it all this evening. We're going to begin right now with Robert Káosz with the protest that's over at the mayor's house, Getty House. And here's Robert live. Robert?
And Chuck, the view from a News Shop report has been correct. This is a crowd that just continues to grow here in Hancock Park, outside of Getty House. This is where Mayor Garcetti lives. This is where Mayor Garcetti is not in residence at this hour, because you're going to see him in just minutes on NBC4 Live speaking from City Hall. But be sure he is going to address what is taking place outside of his residence right now, where he lives with his wife and child. What is this, you may be wondering? What now, and why Mayor Garcetti's house? Well, this is a very carefully, well thought out protest from people in LA. If you look them up and you just hashtag them, you will see that they have published the mayor's budget. They have published a toolkit for people that want to be involved, asking them to contact the council members of the LA City Council and asking them to demand that Mayor Garcetti take money away from the LAPD. First of all, they say it's too much money and other departments in the city are suffering, and they say it's a department that doesn't deserve it. If you look at the signs
Azt mondja, hogy a rendőrség nem érdemli meg a pénzt a budgetba, és hogy a kormányzó vonja vissza, vagy vegyen vissza a rendőrség pénzét.
Predominant chant here this afternoon, as
Defund
well as our
police.
streets. We have members of the LAPD forming a perimeter around the mansion. No one's trying to breach it. We have seen no types of confrontations, no one getting aggressive. We have seen people here, a number of them residents of very Tony Hancock Park, coming out to see what is going on. Remember, this area, Sean, if you just pan to the left, you'll see one of the embassy flags flying, because here you have the British Embassy as well as a number of other embassies in Los Angeles, or consulates right here, and a number of dignitaries here. A very well-protected area of Los Angeles, as well as a very wealthy part of Los Angeles. But the protesters here have told me they're not focusing on the mayor's house or Hancock Park this afternoon in terms of destruction. It really is to get a message across. The people's budget of LA says, Mayor Garcetti, you have control of a budget that has taken a hit after COVID-19, and now you have to take matters into your own hands and try to take money away from the LAPD. There is applause going on right now. I'm not quite sure what is happening. Perhaps Chuck and Colleen, you can join in from News Shopper 4 and tell me what you're seeing there. But again, this is a crowd that the LAPD is keeping a wide berth from, with the exception of those that surround Getty House. And at 5:30, they're going to be asked to leave, and to leave calmly. Where they go from here, however, is anyone's guess. We don't see a lot of cars in this neighborhood where people have driven in from, so we don't know if this march will then proceed into Hollywood or if it's going to head west. But right now, the chants of defund the police and to take back our streets ringing out in front of Mayor Garcetti's home. What Mayor Garcetti has to say about that, we'll know in just a few minutes' time. For now, we're live in Hancock Park. I'm Robert Káosz. Let's go back to you.
Well, Robert, at about the same time those cheers went up, a group of officers was
Hello.
around that intersection.
Hát meglátjuk, hogy mi lesz. Ez inkább most egy ilyen anarchista, lincseléses káoszteremtés, ez nem hiszem, hogy polgárok azok otthon vannak. De lehetséges, hogy odáig fog fajulni.
Hey there, Chuck. So basically, we have the two groups kind of formed together at this point. We've had a lot of them kind of splintering off, and they kind of made their way around and then come back. So right now, we are at Sunset and Vine, and this huge crew just came heading eastbound on Sunset, meeting up with them here at Vine. Now you kind of have them all cheering together. We look like we have a motorcycle in the middle, kind of riling up the crowd here. This is where the National Guard is, and LAPD is also out here doing some crowd control and also directing traffic around the intersection of Vine and Sunset, because a lot of cars have been kind of blocking in this space as well. A lot of people stopping, honking their horns. So right now, this area of Sunset is completely shut down, with the protesters very peaceful here, holding signs, chanting out here together. And it looks like there's been a lot of really, peaceful moments that we've seen out here. We had that moment when the National Guard members got down on a knee here.
Ott már tegnap voltak Hollywoodban. De hát most is ott vannak majdnem egy pár sarokkal lejjebb.
One of the sergeants was kneeling down there holding hands with one of the protesters. So we hear some cheers, but you can see this crowd has gotten dramatically bigger here just in the last maybe 15 minutes or so. We saw that big crowd kind of converge on them and come together, joining as one. And you can kind of see they're all kind of looking toward the middle there, holding their signs up. And we do have, again, that curfew kicking in here shortly, less than an hour now. So at this point, we don't know. We haven't seen any effort to try to clear any of the folks out of this area. They still are actively, peacefully protesting. We've seen no issues at this point. We do keep kind of hearing some sirens going by. We're seeing some fire trucks go by as well. But again, very peaceful at the moment here as they are holding their signs.
Nézd meg az öreg idiótát, ott selfiezget.
Hands up, don't shoot, no justice, no peace. And then chanting the name of George Floyd. So again, we've been out here pretty much all afternoon, and this group has gathered together since about noon today, and then they've kind of made their way around, kind of come back, converged again together, and they're all kind of looking off to this area. So I believe that's where, I think we had the motorcycle in there that was kind of riling up the crowd, getting everybody really pumped, and they were all cheering, getting together again, holding up their signs. So we're going to see if there's any moment where police are going to try to clear out this crowd. So far, we haven't seen that, Chuck.
Well, they certainly are all focused on something there, Kim. As you mentioned, you have the National Guard there, you have the LAPD. We want to bring in NBC4 investigative reporter Eric Leonard for some perspective on what we are seeing.
Na már kocsikkal is jönnek, azt figyeljétek, mennek a mayor házába.
Two large crowds there, Eric. How do the police handle these crowds? They really do seem to change their tactics today. And of course, at the mayor's house, we did see a couple of large transport buses.
Yeah, absolutely, Colleen. The LAPD has shown demonstrators today at multiple locations that the department is taking a little bit of a different approach. Officers are staying a lot further away. Demonstrators have been given a lot more freedom to roam through the streets of Southern California pretty much unchecked. The only time we saw intervention earlier today was when demonstrators looked as if they might try to walk onto the lanes of traffic in some of the freeways. And in those cases, there was some intervention. People were gently pushed off the freeways, and we didn't see any kinds of the confrontations that we've seen over the last few days. As far as what's going on at the mayor's Getty house right now, our understanding from a couple of our contacts, both in law enforcement and amongst the demonstrators, is that the demonstrators told the police, we're going to be here, we're going to say our piece, we are going to rally, and then we are going to leave. And they specifically wanted to avoid having any kind of confrontation today, nothing like what has been seen in recent days. It was really a main goal of some of the organizers of this event today to make a bold statement at the doorstep of Mayor Eric Garcetti, but then end it there and not allow any of the confrontations that we've seen over the last few days to develop there.
Eric, you have some inside information on all the arrests police have made so far. I think the number was 2,700 arrests at least since the beginning, close to 600 in Hollywood. Do we know who they are arresting, where they're from?
Yeah, we have some video to show you here, and we've gone through some police and jail records that show there's a growing divide now between the number of demonstration arrests and the number of looting arrests. News Chopper 4 Bravo hovered overhead as officers in Van Nuys chased groups of looters running from business to business, smashing windows, ransacking store shelves, and some being cornered and caught. Arrest data from the LAPD shows for the day that ended at midnight last night, there were about 93 felony arrests around the city related to the unrest that's been seen on the streets in recent days. Those booked into jail were held on suspicion of looting, receiving stolen property, serious vandalism, and conspiracy. Jail records show about half have posted bail or were released on their own recognizance. The day before, officers booked about 144 people on suspicion of felony charges related to looting. At the Hollywood demonstrations yesterday, officers made more than 585 arrests, the most ever in that area in a single day. Officers in the San Fernando Valley made more than 100 arrests. The majority were detained on misdemeanor curfew or failure to disperse violations. Almost all were issued citations to appear in court and released. The I-team also went back through all of the LAPD's felony arrests related to the looting, vandalism, and arson since last Thursday. That's when the civil unrest broke out, and it does not appear anyone was arrested at once. Now that's really significant because one concern in the midst of the coronavirus crisis is that virtually everyone being locked up for nonviolent crime was being released almost immediately. Courts and prosecutors agreed to send bail to prevent jails from being crowded with people who could then spread the coronavirus. A couple other interesting developments today. One is, as we've gone back through these booking records, we've been looking to see where people are from because there's been a concern, we've discussed it, that outside agitators might be involved in causing some of the harm, the violence, the looting over the last few days. But the booking records show almost everybody arrested is from Southern California, with a handful of exceptions. There have been really just 4 or 5 people from out of state. Lastly, in downtown LA about 1:30 this morning, LAPD arrested a man they say was dressed in military garb, armed with a rifle and a handgun. There's a lot of confusion about what this person was up to. He was dressed in a way that made him look as if he was a member of the National Guard.
Valakit elkaptak, aki be volt öltözve National Guardnak, és közben nem az volt.
Assault weapon, and detectives are still investigating to figure out what he was up to and what his intentions were.
Lehet, hogy csak meg akarta
All right,
védeni.
Eric, thank you for bringing that up. A lot of people had both of those points there. Now, hundreds of people jammed the police commission Zoom call today. They're pretty angry over Police Chief Michael Moore's comment. He said George Floyd's blood was not only on the hands of police, but also that of rioters.
The civil unrest in Los Angeles is not about Minnesota. It's about Los Angeles. You are not holding Los Angeles police officers accountable for anything.
Well, the chief has apologized several times, and he simply misspoke. And Mayor Garcetti tweeted the responsibility for George Floyd's death rests solely with the police officers involved.
And on the subject of police, the state of Minnesota is now taking a stand against the Minneapolis Police Department of the death of George Floyd. The governor there, Tim Walz, announced civil rights charges against the Minneapolis Police Department. Not just a few of the officers, but the entire police department. The state investigation will look into the department's policies, their procedures and practices over the last 10 years. And the governor said it was just one step toward the deconstruction of a systemic racism system in the police department. Also, a lot of people have asked about the funeral of George Floyd, and it is set to take place in Houston, Texas, just 1 week from today. Colleen.
Also, the nation's capital getting ready for another big night of protest there. We've seen fires set near the White House. Right now, there's a fiery debate over the president's photo op. That happened yesterday afternoon, and the peaceful protesters who were cleared out just before it happened. NBC's Alice Barr has it all today.
Today, black ministers raising their voices against racial injustice outside St. John's Church across from the White House. The clergy joining the chorus of criticism over President Trump's photo op, holding up a Bible in front of the historic church after police used tear gas to clear peaceful protesters out of the way.
With President Trump's use of the military against peaceful protesters.
The Episcopal bishop who oversees the church accusing President Trump of using the Bible as a prop.
It was an abuse of the spiritual tools and symbols of our tradition.
Today, the president and first lady visiting a Catholic shrine, making no remarks, and again posing for photos next to a statue of St. John Paul II. That appearance also condemned by a prominent Jesuit priest.
These symbols are being used for political purposes.
At the same time, Democratic governors are speaking out against
valaki állítsa meg a vonatot, én le akarok szállni.
in cities across the country to quell looting and rioting. Presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden seeking to draw a contrast between himself and the man he wants to replace.
I won't fan the flames of hate. I'll seek to heal the racial wounds that have long plagued our country.
Ezt valaki érti, hogy most miért kell azért lázadni, mert a Trump a kezébe a Bibliával lett lefényképezve?
Separating police and protesters as the divide in this country only grows deeper. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
He said, "Get out of the street and come into my home." A D.C. man opened his doors to dozens of protesters last night. He said officers physically attacked and pepper sprayed more than 200 of them. In fact, here's some of the video. People coming out of that house this morning after they all spent the night there. They were part of a protest that was moving uptown from the White House. There was a 7 p.m. curfew in effect. Some of the protesters said they were aware that the curfew was in effect, but they simply got caught up in the police line. They say they are grateful for the man who let them in.
He had helped me out by charging my phone, and he had said if anything was to happen, then we are allowed to go inside the house.
What happened here was an amazing group of people, ranged from 50 years old to 18 years old, that were gathered here peacefully and were absolutely decimated and beaten on the steps of my house.
Television crew from Australian broadcaster 7 Network says they were assaulted by a police officer outside the White House. That curfew in the Capitol was lifted at 6 o'clock this morning.
I'm not sure if the numbers that Fritz Coleman is about to give us are going to reflect how it felt today as we take a live look over the San Fernando Valley, but here is Fritz. Fritz.
Hey, Chuck, well, they reflect heat. We moved up into the low and mid-90s in some spots, and we're not finished the climb. The good news is tomorrow will be the peak day, and there'll be a big turnaround in temperatures and sky conditions for Thursday and Friday. Let's look at the current numbers. We're still in the low 90s in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino at 91, 88 in the San Fernando Valley, not far from NBC, 76 downtown, mid and upper 60s on the coastal side. The marine layer and the onshore flow are really keeping the temperatures within 10 miles of the beach right near normal. So we're going to reach our temperature peaks tomorrow. Some spots in the hotter valley communities will hit 100 degrees, but a huge turnaround. The marine layer, along with the upper and mid-level clouds from a storm that's to the southwest. That's why our skies haven't been pristine over the last couple of days. Dark in some areas. This is the cloud cover from the storm to the southwest. That's going to roll in here tonight, make us mostly cloudy. I'll show you. But by Friday, we're going to be as much as 20 degrees cooler than we are today, thanks to a strengthening of the onshore flow and an increase in the clouds. And then over the weekend, we'll be partly to mostly cloudy, depending on the day, and temperatures will be in the low to mid-80s, so continuing that streak of 20 degrees below the peaks that we'll reach tomorrow, Wednesday being the hottest day. And let's show you what that means. Interior coast, that means inland of about 10 miles from the beach, we'll go 83 to 89, partly cloudy skies. Valleys 91 to 102. The mountains of the foothills 78 to almost 100 degrees, 98 degrees, and the high desert from west to east 93 to 102. Here's a look now at the futurecast. Watch what happens to the cloud cover by the 11 o'clock news today. We've got mostly cloudy skies. That disperses a little by our morning wake-up time tomorrow morning, and we'll be back to partly cloudy skies, and then slightly less marine layer for Thursday, but then we'll pick up more for Friday, which is going to end up being the coolest day. These are the highs tomorrow. San Fernando Valley goes over 100 degrees, 101 at Van Nuys, and some spots may even be warmer to the west of there, the Woodland Hills area, the northwest San Fernando Valley, 94 in the San Gabriel Valley, 100 up in the Antelope Valley, 95 at Moreno Valley, and 91 degrees in Temecula. Here are your 7-day forecasts, the LA Basin, Inland Orange County communities on top. Almost all zones, tomorrow will be the peak day at 86, and then we're down to low to mid-70s by the weekend with more clouds both in the afternoon and in the morning. Coast to the bottom, 76 degrees tomorrow, and then we're backing down 69 degrees on Friday and 70 and 72 over the weekend. Really nicely regulated coastal temperatures because of the sea breeze and the marine layer. Valleys of Los Angeles and Ventura County on the top, 99 degrees. But look at the quick recovery. We're down 9 degrees by Thursday, and then with more clouds and a stronger sea breeze, we're down to the upper 70s Friday and Saturday, and then 81 degrees on Sunday. Not bad. Warm again by the middle of next week. Inland Empire Valley's on the bottom, 98 degrees for Wednesday, and then we're going to be down to 79 by Friday, so the bottom falls out right after tomorrow's peak, and on Saturday and Sunday, 80 and 82 degrees. High desert, which will see some of the warmer temperatures tomorrow, 99, maybe 100. And then we're down to 96 Thursday, 82 by Friday, and over the weekend, upper 70s. So even the deserts are going to back down significantly. Low desert on the bottom goes 109 tomorrow, 108 by Thursday, then down out of the triple digits for the remainder of the forecast. Mountains, 78 degrees on Wednesday, same for Thursday, 68, and a very minor shower chance, almost not worth mentioning, for Friday. And then over the weekend, mid and upper 60s. Beautiful mountain weather. That'll do it. We may come back for an update after the mayor's press conference. If not, we'll see you at 6 o'clock. Chuck, back to you.
We will indeed. Thank you, Fritz. Just ahead, a spike in gun sales. Lines out the door and around the corner. We'll be hearing from some of those waiting to arm themselves and why they're so concerned.
And once again, we're keeping an eye on this very large protest. This is outside the mayor's house in Hancock Park. We've just been told the mayor has delayed his press conference to 6 o'clock this afternoon, but we will certainly bring it to you live as soon as it begins. We'll be right back.
NBC has a unique style of storytelling that's personal, empowering, and engaging. Stories that dig deeper and provide context.
I feel connected, and I kind of missed that.
Stories that highlight individuals making a positive impact.
Let me show you why this matters to you.
Stories that connect people to communities and to each other. NBCLX. Watch now, over the air, and at lx.com.
Dimmer switches landscape lighting, breaker panels, fans, surge protection, smoke detection. Call a Powell fan.
Oh, $8 start of summer.
In a flash.
Our windows have a story to tell. Shouldn't yours?
Hi, I'm Bill.
And I'm Kathleen, and we are owners of American Vision Windows.
You know, it's been 20 years since we started American Vision Windows. I just want to let you know that we're here. Every office is still installing windows.
Bill and I be available to you. It may look different, but it's just really a privilege to be able to serve you in this way.
No payments, no interest up to 12 months, or payments as low as $99. Call 855-956-4556.
Each of us has a purpose. We are destined to do something meaningful. What do you think a private Christian education looks like? GCU offers
Egy kicsit később vissza fogom kapcsolni a live-ot.
Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
Diamonds, the timeless gift. You know the jewelry exchange's prices are unbeatable.
A reklámok nem érdekelnek senkit.
20% on all our fine